Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Edtech for the Heart and Mind, SEL in Distance and Blended Learning Classrooms. My name is Chris Hobson, and I'll be moderating this event. I am the Custom Content Manager for eSchool News, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative session. Today's webinar is sponsored by Edmodo. Edmodo is a global learning platform that provides the support and tools educators need to fully engage learners. With more than 100 million members in over 190 countries, Edmodo facilitates online learning by providing a secure platform for teachers, parents, and students to communicate and collaborate. Before I introduce our presenter, I'd like to take a minute to go over some features of the platform that we're using for today's webinar. Today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on the Q&A box. There will be time at the end of the presentation for our speaker to address questions. Also, there is a chat function that you can launch by clicking on chat. Feel free to use this feature to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question, but please don't use this feature to ask questions of our speaker. If you have a question for the speaker, you can use the Q&A box that I just mentioned. With these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with our presentation. The presenter today is Kate Baker, Senior Community Manager at Edmodo, a former high school English teacher with 20+ years classroom experience, board member of the Flipped Learning Network, and contributing author of Flipping 2.0, Practical Strategies for Flipping Your Classroom. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Kate to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chris, so much. And hello to everyone. It is so nice to see all of you. We have over 680 attendees right now. This is wonderful. So glad to see you all are here to join with me today to talk about SEL. So let's start off with what is SEL. We have a lot of buzz names, buzzwords, acronym, and SEL is certainly a popular one. But if we dive into the definition of it here, we'll see that this is more than just a buzzword. It is much more. So according to research, definition of SEL is and manage emotions, care about others, make good decisions, behave ethically and responsibly, relationships and behaviors. Skills are critical components of the success of all schools. And we can say this is beyond the school, life skills. So if we take a look, Castle organization is wonderful that provides a lot of research on SEL, and they've broken SEL into 4 competencies that are prioritized across a range of settings. Now, I want you to know, though, that this is not something that is just a special lesson. Like, okay, kids, today we're going to do an SEL focus. No. This is something that must be woven into learning. It is not just a special lesson. So with this, we want to look at self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, okay? And all of these things are important. All right, and if we look at everyday class culture for SEL, we have student artwork being displayed around the room. We have opportunities to practice interpersonal skills, also opportunities for mindfulness and metacognition, and so that we can get the work done, daily, weekly, monthly agendas visible in class and online. And if I think about my classroom, this is what my classroom looked like pre-COVID. I had agenda and due dates that were up here. Student work was displayed. Student painted murals were on my walls, and I had group seating for collaboration. Now, in post-COVID and during the time of COVID, what will our classrooms look like? That's a good question. And while we might have some uncertainty with the face-to-face classroom, and as we're trying to meet social distancing and other protocols, we can still control the online space. So if we take a look at what makes a comfortable classroom environment, I polled my students and asked them, sitting in desks, sitting in groups, sitting alone, colorful art posters on the wall, windows up, shades up, and ultimately, what is the one thing that is most important to students was knowing that the teacher liked them. So no matter what our classroom spaces physically may look like, the thing that we have to focus on the most is our relationships with our students. So if we think about this in terms of educational psychology, we can look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a guide for motivation, whether we're in the classroom space or if we're online. And we know this, that students can't do higher level thinking. Adults can't do this either if our basic needs aren't being met. If you have to go to the bathroom right now, then that's something that's going to take priority over, listening to me do this webinar. So this is an important thing we need to always keep in mind. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often depicted as a pyramid, as like we climb that mountain and we get to the top and we're transcended. But in actuality, I want you to think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a ladder, that we are continually moving up and down this ladder, always assessing our needs and making sure that we are physically safe, that we belong to a community, we feel good about it, and that we can have this transcendent experience. But we need to take care of the culture continually, not just in a while. So we think about this in terms of digital learning. I've adapted Maslow's hierarchy of needs for this online space. And we know this, that if we want to integrate technology with our students, if our physical needs of having the actual hardware is not met, we don't have Wi-Fi or battery, we're not going to be able to integrate technology. Also, we need to have the safe space with digital citizenship, firewalls, safe searches, so that we can engage effectively. But where teachers and educators need to focus their energies, because oftentimes the physical needs and the safety needs are things determined by our administration, where we need to focus our energy is on creating these spaces where students feel that they belong to something greater than themselves and that they feel good about the space that they are in. So I can do this with Edmodo. As Chris told you in the opening, and to give you a little bit of a recap for those of you who aren't familiar with Edmodo, it is a communication and collaboration platform, but it has also plenty of learning management capabilities, lots of tools for educators to use so that we can engage learning anywhere it may happen, whether it's in person, online, or a hybrid of the two. And with Edmodo, what's amazing is that the world is just a post away. It is amazing to see how many users are on Edmodo from 190 active countries, over 144 million registered users. So it's amazing that with one post, I can connect to teachers around the world and do some collaborative projects globally. So when you log on to Edmodo, this is what you will first see. This is the home stream, our home page that has a quick list of your classes and your groups that you belong to, any hashtags you may follow. We also have in the center column here, the ongoing class, the ongoing activity from that global network of anyone who you are connected to is posting in real time, and you're able to share resources and connect with others. But the magic for Edmodo for students happens in that classroom space. And in here, This is where teachers can differentiate instruction, you can gamify, you can flip, you can blend, and you can just foster all of those relationships and build on those skills for SEL. So before we launch into some of the more intricate features in the SEL component, I want to bring up and share with you the SAMR model by Dr. Ruben Pudendentura. Now, the SAMR model is about Edtech integration, how you use technology in your classroom. Now, you can use it as a direct substitute. You know, if you are writing with a pen and paper, okay, you can substitute a computer and you can use, you know, Word or Google Docs to now type it up. But this also enhances the experience because we're able to augment it with a functional improvement. So if you're doing that word processing, now you have quick, easy access, let's say, to a spell check and a grammar check, that you're able to do things that the paper wasn't able to do. But also with the technology, you're able to transform the experience and modify it with a significant task redesign. That same document, well, now it can be a place for collaboration where people are posting asynchronous comments, where they are making edits in real time, and that you're able to have so many people in one space communicating and creating together. And you can also use technology to have a whole different redefinition of the experience. What we're doing right now, being on Zoom, being able to be connected, using a lot of those same skills of typing and listening, we're able to transform this experience using technology. Now, I love this graphic by Sylvia Duckworth because it gives a wonderful visual as to how the SAMR model can transform learning. That, you know, when you're not using tech, you're on land, you're wondering, you know, I wonder what's in the ocean. And then you get in the boat and you're able to now have a direct tool to work with. But then as you use scuba gear and snorkeling gear, you're able to augment and modify the experience. And then if you get into a submersible, whew, it's a whole redefinition of how you can explore the underworld. Now, when we think about this with Edmodo, and we can take it about collaborative discussion. So we can have posts and comments in a class. This could be a substitute for us, but we can also augment the experience by using some other Edmodo features to check for understanding. We can use posts and comments. We can use shared folders, polls, quizzes, assignments in a class space. But then we could even modify this because you could use all of those same features and small groups to create breakout groups and differentiate your instruction. And if you want to redefine the experience for your students and transform it, well, you can use all those same features too. And now you could create digital design thinking PLCs and global collaboration groups. And all the while that you're doing this, I want you to be thinking about that ladder of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and constantly thinking about, okay, does everyone have access? Is it all equitable? Are we conducting ourselves in this safe space? Do we all feel that we belong to something? Do we feel good about this? And keep tending to those needs as we engage in the learning. So if we think about this, I love Maslow, and I've remixed him one more time here to think about it in terms of collaboration. Well, we know we can't collaborate and do collaborative learning if we don't have the resources, the people, the equipment, the location to collaborate. We know that we can't safely conduct this if we don't have norms and protocols for working together. But then in order for us to feel that we belong to this space, we need some team building, peer mentorship, some modeling, and then so that we get the signal back that we're valuable to the community, we need that feedback, accolades, recognition, and affirmation. And all of this adds up. And again, even though I have the pyramid here and climb that proverbial mountain, we still want to think about tending to all of our needs all the time. So let's take this now into SEL and Edmodo. So we can use Edmodo classes in small groups to create that engaging virtual space. And this can't just be a substitute. You know, if we have to pivot from an in-person classroom and move to all online learning, yeah, we can substitute a wee bit. It will never be exactly the same, though, as the experiences that we might have face-to-face. But we can redesign it, and we can do some things with the technology so that we are supporting SEL, blended, flipped, and distance learning, and creating that classroom culture. And we can leverage all of those Edmodo tools to do that for our students, whether we are in the classroom or online. So first off, thinking about our class design, I want you to get creative with how you organize your students and your class rosters. Now, you could do one class per period. If you have 5 classes, you could do a period 1, period 2, period 3, etc. class. Now, I recommend that you always do begin your class names with your school year, so that as you use Edmodo or any other LMS, that as you use these for the long term, that you are making a class for each year, okay? And that you have it archived accordingly, that you're able to pull up that information from that specific year. But I also want to encourage you to think bigger than that and think about collaboration and community and how you can create a personal learning network experience for your students so that they're acting with people they do see face-to-face, but also those they may not. So what if you added all of your classes of the same level or subject to one Edmodo class? So this is what I did when I taught high school English. I would do one Edmodo class for my honors students, and I would do another Edmodo class for my general level students. My honors class had 3 sections in it. My general level had 2. My students were able to interact with people that they might not see face-to-face. And bonus, it saved me time having to post to multiple classes. Instead of having to post 5 times for all 5 of my classes, I only had to post twice, which is good. Let's work smarter, not harder. You can also get creative with your Edmodo classes too and repurpose them. So in the case of this class, we use this. I made a new class for a surprise birthday party, and I jazzed it up with a class banner, and we filled up the class with posts, colleagues to surprise the person whose birthday it was. And this is, you can create so many Edmodo classes for so many different purposes, not just for learning, but think about, again, community building and being able to bring that online space alive. And as we want to create that engaging online space, CASEL has 3 signature practices for encouraging SEL with your students and staff. You want to open up with a welcoming activity, routines, and rituals that will build that community and connection to the work ahead. We also want to have engaging strategies that offer opportunities and that vary in complexity for the individual and collective learning. So, in your toolkit, however strategies you have, you want to use them and vary it so that students can experience and be engaged. And then you want to close out your class period with optimistic closures. Things that will highlight individual and shared understandings and provide a sense of accomplishment and support forward thinking. So in Edmodo, what can we do to support this? Well, we can create agenda posts and use the student planner to support students' self-management and decision-making skills. Any quiz or assignment that's created by the teacher and sent to the class will automatically populate on the planner, which is a calendar, and is really useful for students to see. We can also do, as part of our welcoming routine, we can use a wellness check and a poll to check in with our students at the beginning of the learning period and to assess their understanding. Now with polls, it will be whole class anonymous, so I will not be able to see individual posts, and the students will also be able to see the hold data for the class as well. And wellness checks. With wellness checks, it is pre-populated question and answers. Polls, teachers can create their own questions and answers choices. And then on the wellness check, the whole class will see who has responded, but the teacher behind the scenes can take action. So if we see that a student has selected, if we see that there's 2 votes for I'm struggling, the teacher can click on that and see behind the scenes who has selected those responses, and then do a direct message or a personal check-in to help out and see what they can do to facilitate moving that student forward and getting them into a better space. Another thing with posting the daily agenda, this is really important. When you're doing either face-to-face, in-person, or distance learning, everyone needs to understand what is the routine, what are the tasks that I need to do. So again, let's think smarter, not harder. And let's get students to be able to start at square 3 instead of every day opening up the class on Edmodo and trying to figure out what they need to do. If you follow a consistent routine of posting the daily agenda, and this is very simple, you have a welcome message, you have your objectives for the day, you have your tasks for the day that are listed in to do, you have your resources and links to posts, and then include any timelines that are for any work that needs to be turned in. Now, you'll notice with these, I have it numbered, and then I also have links to where I want my students to go to. On Edmodo, every post has a unique URL. So if I post a quiz to my students to complete and I post an assignment for them to complete, if I click on that ellipsis icon on the post, I can get the link to that post, and then I can paste it into the daily agenda. So now students don't have to worry about scrolling up and down the class stream, trying to look for it. It's right there, easy access. Plus, they would also see those items listed on their student planner. So multiple ways that they will be able to see what they need to do. Okay. And this is the mobile view of the student planner for students. Then again, all teacher created quizzes and assignments are automatically populated. Students can set reminders for themselves. They can also put in their own items. They can check off when things are done, and being able to tag things as like a personal item versus, a school thing. And this is great for student efficacy and supporting executive function, knowing what you need to do, making the plan to do it, and getting it done. So if we also dive a little bit deeper into social awareness, relationship skills, and self-awareness, we can use a few different features to build community. So coming soon, I'm very excited for this integration that's coming, is that Zoom will be directly integrated into Edmodo, that you will be able to open up your Edmodo class, you'll be able to click the blue create button, and right there in the drop-down menu will be add a Zoom meeting. We also can do posts and comments with attachments and GIFs to provide opportunities to practice those interpersonal skills. So you can do this in multiple modalities. You could also, until that integration comes, you can, fire up your Zoom meeting, schedule it, get the link to that meeting, paste it as a post in your Edmodo class, and you can practice doing community building through the screen. You can also have it be asynchronous community building using the posts and comments. So if we take a look here at some posts in a sample class, and we allow students the opportunity to share and communicate, it is fascinating to see that personal motivation. So here in this conversation, Christopher has replied to teacher Roosevelt's post about reminding them to study for tomorrow's test. And Christopher says, oh, here, I've made some note cards on Quizlet and I'm sharing the link with all of you. The rest of the classmates are really happy about this. Hashtag better together. And then even the teacher can, I know this post isn't animated right here, but you can attach a GIF to, add some visual delight, as well as, static images to create that visual delight for your students in that space. And I love to reply to posts with a digital sticker. Okay, this isn't anything like rocket science. I have a file folder saved on my desktop where I have saved different JPEGs, PNGs that I can attach to a post as a digital sticker. I'll also attach these images into the comments on students' assignments so that, again, we're substituting that, in-person paper sticker that I could put on a person's paper in class with now using a JPEG or a PNG to enhance the experience here, okay? I also encourage you to explore flipping your direct instruction. And this is for both in-person learning and in distance learning. So I flipped my classroom for a good 8+ years, and I made videos of everything. Anything I didn't want to have to repeat to my students, I would make a video for it. Why? Because the students can always pause, rewind, and rewatch the video accordingly. Now, they can't do that with me personally and with any other teacher, but being able to control the video and having that little bit of choice to be able to pause it and say, okay, hold on, let me write this down. Okay, let me rewind it. I missed that, and think about how many times our students, when we've been in class and we've given direct instruction verbally, that there's been the child who's been in the bathroom, there was another one who might have zoned out and who says, what did you say again? I missed it. Well, the video now is able to be a substitute for that and augment the experience because we have that functional improvement of control. So I recommend take what you already have. If you have a, answer key, or you have a piece of paper that you've done, your edits on, like in this screenshot here, I have my paper that I did active reading on, annotation. I scanned it, uploaded it to my computer, pulled it up on my screen, and then did a screen recording and talked through those annotations. Now the students would then follow my model. And how do I know that they watched the video? Well, then on their personal papers, they would do the annotation, and then they could show me their work that they've watched the video. You could also have students take a picture of the paper task and turn that image into as part of an Edmodo assignment so that you can document that they've done the work. I'll even make videos for my answer keys. Again, work smarter, not harder, save some time in my classroom space, is that I will do a video where I am talking through the answers of a worksheet or an activity, and I'll upload that video to YouTube or to my Google Drive. I'll attach that as a link to my agenda post for my students, and I will allow my students to go and check their answers. And they have to take that small action of going and clicking that link to watch is really an important step, because they're making that choice to go find the answer and to look at it. Now, when it comes time for the summative assessment and it's the big test, and I don't want them to access that video while taking the test, I just change the permissions. Turn the video from public back to private, and oh, sorry, you can't see it. When the test is over, I will turn the video back to public, and then students can also use that to go check their work. Again, small little actions that can build in opportunities for students to build that capacity for self-management and for autonomy. Now with Edmodo Quizzes, I love Edmodo Quizzes, and I use them not just for a summative assessment like my final exam or a unit test. I will also use them as a substitute for paper worksheets, and I'll use them as a group activity as well. Now, so many times teachers lament that, when students are doing distance learning, that they're FaceTiming at the same time that they're doing their online work, and that they're able to cheat and get their answers from each other. Actually, I don't call that cheating. I call that social learning. And I'm okay with it. Go ahead, do your FaceTime, do your video conferencing with one another. You can't stop them, so why not just let it go? I'll do the quiz as a group quiz, but it's really an activity where I want them to talk about the work, talk about the content, but then they each individually have to key in their own answer. Now, with Edmodo Quizzes, you can put a little trick in there where you can randomize the questions. So when first time I did a group quiz with my students, I realized very quickly that they just went down, okay, number 1 is C, number 2 is B, number 3 is D. And I went, oh, okay, we need to do something different here. So then I randomized it and then just sat back and watched. And the students, when they opened up the quiz and they realized, number 1, no, you're number 1. Okay, all right. Now they actually had to talk about the content and use the words in the question and use the words in the answer choices to get to that common answer. And then they still had to do the individual keying of their answer. Now, when it comes time to grading this, I actually did not just, sometimes I would take the exact score. You know, if they got an 80 out of 100, I might put that into the grade book. But other times I would do a scale. And the rubric I would use was called OSU, outstanding, satisfactory, unsatisfactory. So if you scored in a specific range, you got the O, and that equated to 100%. If you scored in kind of a mid-passing range, you got the S, satisfactory, and that was an 88%. And then if you failed the quiz, but you still made an attempt, I gave you a U, which was a 74%, which was on our grading scale was a D. So what I was doing with that was being able to reward the students who actually tried hard and worked hard to get, you know, a high score, but I didn't penalize the students who might have struggled in the middle. You know, I still wanted to reward them and give them an attempt, as well as to help encourage the students who struggle to, okay, I see that you're having issues. Let's do some modifications. Let's do some remediation, and then let's let you take that quiz again. And I'm okay with that. I have no problems. If a student says to me, can I try again? The answer will always be yes. Because again, I want them to support, I want to support that feeling of like self-management and being able to control and choose what they want to do. Now with Edmodo Assignments, if I want to have something that's you know, more open-ended, it's created by me, it's also scored by me, then I'll use an Edmodo assignment for this. I can load in new or existing assignments. I can attach links, viewable, editable, Google and Word docs. Students can turn in links, they can turn in files. I can set a due date, optionally lock it, as well as ask for resubmissions. Now I know it's going to be a little small here on this screenshot, but a really awesome feature. If I see that students haven't viewed the assignment yet, I can send them a reminder message that the clock is ticking, your assignment's due soon, hurry up, get it done. And again, trying to support their ability to be successful here and handle that executive functioning. Now, I also want you to get creative, not just with the classroom tools of quizzes and assignments, but I also want you to get creative with your small groups. Now, every Edmodo class, you can differentiate your instruction. You can break that bigger class into small groups for projects, for you name it. And I had a very special small group that I created that I added all of my students to, and it was called Share Our Work. Now, very specific pronoun there, our, because again, I want to build a sense of community and that we are part of a space that we belong together. So in this small group, we used it as a digital bulletin board where students, when they turn in an assignment to me, and in this case of these screenshots here, They did some digital vision boards using Google Slides. And they also did an inspirational message using Google. And we learned some visual design skills with this. That when students turned in their assignment to me for grading, I also asked them to post it to the Share Our Work small group so that the classmates could see what each other are doing. They could recognize each other's work, give some feedback, give some positive affirmation and recognition to folks who do, some interesting things. Plus, it's making sure that student work lives on. It doesn't just sit statically in a folder somewhere, that it's able to live and breathe and add to the well-being of the group. Now, you can also think too about this and redefine the experience of engagement for your students by having them make their own screencasts. So I like to use screencasts at various times within the learning cycle. So whereas I, the teacher, will flip my direct instruction, I'll make a video with instructions, I'll make a video at the conclusion, that's the answer key. I also want students to think about the process of learning. And so often with their work, it's about when is this due, when do I turn it in? But I want them to slow down and I want them to think and I want them to own it. So we'll use the Chrome extension Screencastify. The students will, in the middle of a project, will create a screencast, short, 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. We're not Hollywood. We don't need a long video. So they make a very short video. They just talk through the process, what they're doing. Now, I can also have them create their own screencast for the end of the learning cycle. Like once the project has been created, then they create a screencast for that as well. But the reason why I want it in process is because, again, I want them to think about what they're creating. I want them to slow down and focus on that metacognition. But then I also want to give them an opportunity to have their classmates offer them some feedback. So in our collaborative spaces, in the case of this one here, Ethan posted his screencast talking through the ebook he was creating in Google Slides and shared that video with the group. And then other students are able to give this wonderful narrative feedback and to offer some suggestions, some ideas. So here we are supporting collaboration in the process of learning, not just after the fact. Now, let's go back to that diagram from the Castle organization, because if we want to take a closer look here at the outer rings. Now, we've spent a lot of time looking at self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness, but all of this is encircled by not just our classrooms, not just our schools, but also our homes and communities. So we want to think about not just our curriculum instruction, not just our school-wide policies and practices, but also how we can engage our family and community in various partnerships. So one very, very special screencast I make at the beginning of my school year is I will create a video where I flip my class expectations. All I do is use up my document that I would print and deliver to my students. But in the case here, I would use that as my visual. Now this video is longer. Whenever I make a video for flipped learning, I always keep it around 5 minutes. Now you might say, but Baker, that's a really short video. Yeah, that's intentionally short. Number one, I'm not Hollywood. I'm not going to do crazy special effects. I'm not going to rivet you with, amazing acting. So it's going to be short on purpose because of the quality of the video. It'll be good, but I'm not Hollywood. But also, I want to tap into the students' behavior with video watching and what they do in their own personal time. Now we know that students can sit down and watch Netflix and they can binge a whole season in an afternoon. sit there for 6 hours and boom, they're done. Okay, so in the case of flipping, I will make a short video, 5 minutes, but if I have a lot of content to do, I will actually make a whole series and string those 5-minute videos together. Studies have shown that when it comes to effective viewing and keeping the audience engaged, 3 5-minute videos, okay, that's a total of 15 minutes, keeps people more engaged, viewers more engaged than just one 15-minute video, okay? So we want to tap into that sensibility. And when you create your flip videos, make them short, do a series for all the things that you need, to discuss if it's bigger content. But the one video I do make that's longer, and because it's special and it's important, and because I need more than just my students to watch this, I will do my class expectations. And this will have all the information for the year. And I want my students to watch this within, prior to our back to school night. Now, I don't know what back to school night's gonna look for you this year with all the COVID, school closures. But if you make a video, you can still have your audience involved. And I would have my students watch that video with their parent and then submit to me a reflection about what it was like to do their class expectations homework video with their parents. And then I also ask them to submit a picture. It's part of an assignment. It's not going to the greater class. It's an enclosed space where I would like them to do in a picture where they, kind of put the computer screen in the image with it. So it's kind of proof that they watched, okay? So I want you to think about how else you can engage community members in extension assignments. Ask students to do some recording, an explanation, let's say, of math or science problems, or recounting an historical event to a family member or pet. Ask them to take a picture with a family member, a pet, or a stuffed animal. You could also do some creative app smashing, and that if students are uncomfortable or family members are uncomfortable having themselves recorded, well, you could use avatars. Bitmojis are great. You can do some app smashing with Google Slides and other tools to, create a nice, interesting visual, experience to recount, some of the learning. And some additional ideas, which I hope, if you have other ideas for engaging with your community members, I hope you'll share them in the chat here. But you can also do a choice board. Give students some options that they can pick from and the tools that they can use to show what they know. Another engagement strategy. All right, within Edmodo, we have some additional things that you can use for engagement. You can check out Edmodo's Discover area for some additional content gains and resources. There's some videos, there's some apps, you name it, it's there for you. And when we think about how we can do some self-management and self-awareness, we can use those wellness checks and an app called Happy Not Perfect, which is also found in the Discover area. So wellness checks are great. Again, make them part of your SEL welcoming ritual, or you can have them as part of your optimistic closure, so you can check in with students. And this is fantastic for both in-person and online learning. And then the app, Happy Not Perfect, is amazing. I love this particular app. You can find it in the Discover area of Edmodo, both on mobile and on web. And they have meditations, they have mindfulness exercises. You could do this as a whole class, connect your phone to, your Bluetooth speaker and do a whole class experience. You could use it as an optimistic closure where you say, okay, kids, let's go to Edmodo. Let's open up Happy Not Perfect. Put on your headphones. You get the 5 minutes, at the end of this class period to do a Happy Not Perfect, brain break. I highly recommend that one. And as we look at all the things that Edmodo can do for us and how we can tap into SEL and align with that CASTLE framework, again, to recap for you, our small groups and classes, our posts and comments, agenda posts in the calendar planner to support self-management, and that integration with Happy Not Perfect, all of this provides opportunity for us to engage not just our students, but also the greater communities that we are connected to. All right, I have one last story to share with you before we get to our Q&A section. And I encourage you to get creative with your Edmodo classes. Take things that you've already done and how you can use that SAMR model to substitute, augment, modify, or redefine the experience. Now, I taught freshman English for 20 years. I taught Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey, for 20 years. At about year 15, I was starting to feel, like, oh, okay, I keep doing this same routine. Let me try something new. And I learned about gamification. Now, gamification is wonderful. It is a great engagement strategy where you are taking game-based learning and applying it to the classroom. Now, it could be the playing of games, or in the case of this game I designed, something that's more of an epic journey. So I took all of my content for the Odyssey game and I broke it up into chunks and I put them into small groups. Okay, so you can see the list here of all the subtopics of content that I would review with my students. Now, within each of these small groups, I loaded in resources, checks for understanding, okay? Now, I paired with this a game board on paper, okay? So I'm giving them here, this is really just a to-do list, but it looks like a game. Okay, so insider information, all I did was put in a table on a Google Doc, and then I turned the lines here to white so that they were hidden to create this like snake-like shape, okay? So it's really just a table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, okay, to make it look pretty. Because the visual design here mattered. I wanted my students to understand this game. Now, when I designed this, I was just playing with gamification. I just wanted to try something new. I learned about it from some colleagues and was like, all right, let me see. Take something I know, let me remix it and see what I can do. Now, I had a student who sat in the back corner. His name was Ray. Ray was a C, D kind of kid. He actually had a haircut here for his school picture, but I want you to imagine like his hair over his eyes. And Ray was the kind of kid who just did enough to get by. Didn't want to get noticed, didn't really feel that he belonged to the greater big space, but he was there and he did enough to pass. Now, first marking period, Ray got a C. Second marking period, he got a D. Third marking period, I introduced them to the Odyssey game. I signed out the Chromebooks for a good 2 weeks. Now, again, we did this in person pre-COVID, and I'm already thinking about how I can do this post-COVID and adapt it, okay? Now, signed out, said, okay, kid, here you go, we're gonna play. And yeah, they kind of rolled their eyes at me and they're like, yeah, Baker, some game here. And I'm like, but it's okay, just roll with it. Give them their game board and said, okay, here's what you're gonna do. You have to navigate along the lines of the game board, go to the places it tells you to go, do the things it tells you to do, mark down that you've done it, what your score is, show me that paper, and then I give you access to level 2. Now, doesn't that sound a whole lot cooler than I just added you to the next small group? So the way I designed this was that students were in one group at a time, and then when they showed me their paper, I leveled them up and gave them access to the next small group. Well, give this to Ray. Ray takes off like a rocket. Ray is flying through all these levels. Ray is doing fantastic. Ray's scores are amazing. We get to the end of the marking period and grades come out, and Ray has an A. I pulled Ray aside at the end of the class period and I said to Ray, I was like, oh my God, Ray, this is awesome. I'm so proud of you. You did so great. And Ray, again, pictures hair over his eyes. I was like, yeah, thanks, Mrs. Baker. That was my first A ever. And I was like, yeah, freshman year, you had a, slow start. It was, a struggle. I get it. And he stops me. mid-sentence, and he says, "No, Mrs. Baker, that was my first A ever." The bell rings, he walks out the door, and I'm left standing there going, what? No wonder that kid flew low under the radar. No wonder, because he never felt like he belonged to something greater than himself, never felt that he was good enough. Now, fast forward, really proud of Ray. Fourth marking period, we're doing Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Ray got another A. And then every time after that I saw him in the hallway when I was still teaching, Ray would look at me and say, "What's up, Miss Baker? Still getting A's." And I'm really proud to say that Ray has since graduated high school. He's now in culinary school in Philadelphia. And I constantly use Ray as a reminder that we always need to innovate. We always need to think about things. And then we never know what student we might reach when we do so. So as we get close to the Q&A time, I want to bring this all back together and think about what is the why here and the importance of SEL. Well, as we can meet students' needs and as we can support these SEL practices within our classroom spaces, there's something unique that starts to happen. That students shift from this space where they're thinking of themselves, that we have then supported them to get them to think about the group space and to think about people beyond themselves. And then hopefully move all the way up to where now they're thinking about the greater good of society and not just letting people do and decide for them, but now taking a stance and helping out and deciding and doing for others. So I thank you all and want to remind you that as you go and integrate these SEL practices, make sure that you utilize that flipped and blended learning for both in-person and face-to-face, that you also create that PLN experience with the tools that you do use so that students can practice those self-management and interpersonal skills, and that you nurture these relationships and provide the opportunity for interaction and tasks so that you can encourage that metacognition and that personal growth. So, Chris, back to you, and holy moly, do I see a whole lot of questions in that Q&A section. Let's get to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. It looks like we have about 10 minutes, so we'll get to what we can. As a reminder, if you put a question into us and we don't get to it today, somebody from Edmodo will get back to you privately. So let's get started. First question is, can you teach and train SEL across all school and grade levels? Will this training be beneficial for kindergarten teachers? Is this training geared toward high school? Open question there.
Okay, so I would say that SEL is something that is definitely should be integrated into every single grade. It is not something that is just a one-time deal, just a fourth grade initiative. It definitely needs to be something that is part of every day in every grade and with every staff member, that your English teachers, your math teachers, everyone can be integrating SEL practices into their classrooms, because it's not just about the content, it is about the pedagogy and it's about the life skills. And you can build some life learning into any subject area.
Okay, sort of piggybacking on that, what instructional methods are commonly used for SEL?
So collaboration, definitely need to have that, but we want to also mix that with some independent learning. So we want to strike a balance between, students working as an individual and then students also working collaboratively. Now, it's easy enough to say like, okay, here, individual instruction, give this to students and say, here's your to-do list, go do it. We want to think about, though, the cognitive load, and especially when we're looking at if we have to pivot from an in-person classroom to an online one suddenly, as we did in the springtime back in March. For many schools, that was tough. And we also want to think about some trauma-informed practices. So, when the brain is in fight or flight mode, it can only focus on survival. We don't have the neuroplasticity for doing lots of cognitive high level thinking. So when we want to do this with students, we want to think about, you know, building their capacity. Don't start them at like, you know, advanced level. Work it in slowly, scaffold process, build it up. So your to-do list, start off with simple agendas, but be structured and use the same pattern and routine so that the students become comfortable with that behavior. You know, so this is a lot of also like behaviorism techniques, and operant conditioning goes into this with your educational psychology. But we also want to think about then, you know, that positive reinforcement, and then using those individual skills and then bringing them into the group space. So again, we can say to kids, here, go pick your groups and go get these things done. But that's not always great pedagogy, and that's not great, you know, social learning, because they might not think your content that to work on is a high priority, and they'd rather instead socialize, which as human beings, that's what they do. And as teenagers, because their brains aren't fully developed yet, that's what they're also going to pick first, is socializing instead of the actual content. So again, you want to scaffold that collaboration process. You want to build in those skills, teach them how to do this, do things with like low stakes first. You know, some think, pair, shares are great. You know, don't overcomplicate it, the experience. You know, and then as you look at your instructional design, you're able to create this experience that will teach students to work independently, but also function well on a collaborative level too.
Another question here. How can stakeholders determine which SEL skills to focus on and support?
In that case, because it can be overwhelming, like, oh, we have to do all the things. I would recommend doing some needs assessment. So surveys are a great starting point. You know, if you're not sure where to begin, well, like, let's take a step back and let's look at the lay of the land. Let's understand our audience, understand what every stakeholder needs, because, you know, what parents need versus what students need, what teachers need might be different. So surveys are great to understand. You know, if you design a survey effectively, it can give you some clear direction into what skills that you want to tap into. You could also look at some other data, you know, your main office and discipline reports. You know, take a look there. Do you need some conflict resolution skills? You know, do students also, you know, have a lot of truancy? Now, maybe some of these things are due to things outside of the classroom. You know, maybe there's things in the home life that need to be addressed first, but it would open up the door to having a conversation and how the stakeholders could collaborate and do some design thinking to find a solution to get people there. So, you know, there is no one fit answer for this question. Like, what's the most important skill? The most important skill is the one that you need, and it's the one that needs to be developed. But that is going to vary depending on everybody's areas.
Sounds good. This is probably maybe a little bit of the same answer, but how can SEL programming be evaluated?
So same thing. You know, we can go online and, you know, open up your email, you get solicitation for this program, that program, etc. Well, again, do some action research, you know, do a needs assessment. What does your community need? Then as you evaluate any program, look at the cost, look at the ongoing support, look at, you know, how is it implemented? I also would look at, you know, whoever's designed this program, do they provide support to you and your school district organization, you know, long term? What other resources are available? So again, like, there's no one fit answer there, but you can go down a checklist and say, okay, no different than evaluating a curriculum program. You know, what makes you pick one textbook over another textbook to use with your students? What, you know, one online program versus another? it's that same thing. You have to go through, understand what your community needs, and then move forward accordingly.
Okay, well, it looks like we're right at the top of the hour, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Again, if you submitted a question that we didn't get to in the Q&A portion, someone from Edmodo will follow up with you directly. I'd like to thank our presenter today for a very informative presentation, and also like to thank the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording, along with a PDF of the slides. Thanks again for participating. Have a great day.